The two most powerful countries on Earth are moving toward a confrontation that nobody has figured out how to stop. Warships are changing routes. Military aircraft are getting closer than ever, and behind closed doors, decisions are being made that could shape the next decade. Right now, something is happening between America and China that could change everything you know about how the world is organized. The people watching this most carefully are talking about a window of 2 to 3 years. Some say less. Welcome to our channel. This channel covers the stories that actually explain the world, the ones that do not make the front page until it is too late. This is one of those stories. By the time this video ends, you're going to understand what is really driving this confrontation, why it is escalating faster than almost anyone predicted, and why the thing America is most afraid of is not a bomb. It is a chip. Where is this happening? Pacific Ocean, Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, Pentagon war rooms, semiconductor factories. Now look offshore. There is a curved chain of islands running from Japan, through Taiwan, down through the Philippines, and bending toward Vietnam and Malaysia. The first island chain. China sits behind it. Every warship China wants to move into the open Pacific has to pass through a gap in that chain. Every military asset pointed east has to clear that line, and for decades, the United States and its allies have positioned themselves to control every single one of those gaps. At the center of that chain sits Taiwan, 23 million people, an island roughly the size of Maryland. It looks almost irrelevant on a map of Asia. Taiwan produces the most advanced semiconductors on Earth, the chips that go into American stealth aircraft, American guided missiles, and American battlefield communications. Without those chips, American warfare as it is currently designed does not function. That is a supply chain fact, not a theory. The South China Sea, roughly the size of the entire Mediterranean, among the busiest shipping corridors on Earth. Trillions of dollars of global trade move through it every year. China claims almost all of it, has built artificial islands inside it and turned them into military bases, and now patrols those waters as if international law simply does not apply to them. What is happening right now? Military exercises are escalating. Chip wars ignited. Warships confronting each other. War games are turning real. China just completed its biggest national legislative session of the year. The #1 headline out of Beijing was not the economy, not jobs, not housing. China announced yet another increase to its defense budget, continuing a streak that has not broken in nearly 30 years. A national state directive to accelerate development in 4 specific areas: artificial intelligence, advanced semiconductor manufacturing, hypersonic weapons, electronic warfare systems. These are not research priorities. These are warfighting priorities. And the full weight of the Chinese Communist Party is now behind all 4 of them simultaneously. Justice Mission 2025. Justice Mission 2025. Every branch of the Eastern Theater Command moved at once. Ships on the water, jets overhead, missiles in the air, ground forces staged and ready. It opened with simulated strikes and ran all the way through to a sustained lockdown of the island. Analysts who have spent careers watching Chinese military drills said they had never seen that many moving parts working together that cleanly, not in a live exercise, not out in the open. Shortly after that exercise, the rate of Chinese military aircraft entering Taiwan's air defense identification zone suddenly dropped. Not because things got calmer. Beijing had calculated that continued flights were giving Taiwan's government the political justification to push through a bigger defense budget. So, China dialed them back specifically to cut that argument off at the source. China dialed back its ADIZ activity on purpose to cut off the political argument Taiwan was using to justify a defense budget increase. Chinese vessels blasted Philippine boats with water cannons near reefs, both sides claim. A PLA helicopter got uncomfortably close to an Australian military aircraft in international airspace, and Canberra lodged a formal complaint. Washington loosened restrictions on selling top-end AI chips to China, and Congress responded with emergency hearings the same week. Out on the water, Chinese Coast Guard ships have been turning high-pressure hoses on Philippine fishing and resupply vessels near contested reefs. The goal is to make Chinese control over these waters feel like the new normal before anyone decides it is worth going to war over. The chip war front. NVIDIA's most powerful processors, the kind capable of running serious AI training at scale, went from being effectively off-limits to being evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Congress went to war over it. The House Foreign Affairs Committee held an emergency hearing. New legislation was introduced to strip the White House of authority over chip export licenses entirely. Why America is concerned. 9 carriers by 2035. AI is closing the gap. Rare earths weaponized. A trap with no clean exit. One key reason is pace. America's own congressionally mandated China Military Power Report laid it out plainly. China is pushing toward 9 aircraft carriers by 2035. Right now, they have 3. The United States runs 11. In less than a decade, China intends to triple that number. A gap that once seemed impossible to close is shrinking at a rate nobody in American defense planning saw coming. Another major factor is artificial intelligence applied to warfare. The PLA studied the war in Ukraine with extraordinary attention. Drone tactics, electronic jamming. The way precision strikes on logistics can collapse a military faster than killing soldiers can. They applied every lesson they took from it directly to Chinese military systems. AI is now being integrated into weapons targeting, command structures, and battlefield communications in ways that are compressing the timelines that once gave America a comfortable operational advantage. The rare earth problem. And then there is the issue almost nobody is talking about loudly enough. Rare earth materials. China controls the dominant share of rare earth processing worldwide. These minerals are essential inputs for semiconductors, radar equipment, precision weapons, and communications technology. Every category that matters in both economic and military competition depends on them. When a diplomatic dispute broke out with Japan, Beijing moved quickly to tighten rare earth export controls on Tokyo. America's deepest fear is not a missile, it is a math problem. If China pulls 4 or 5 years ahead in AI development, that lead translates directly into autonomous weapons, cyber attack systems, predictive battlefield logistics, and AI-guided missiles. The outcome of a future conflict may come down entirely to which side has the superior artificial intelligence. AI runs on chips. The most advanced chips are made in Taiwan, and Taiwan is the object of the entire dispute. America is trapped inside its own supply chain. Every chip it restricts from China slows Chinese military AI. But every restriction costs American chip companies billions that they need to fund the next generation of research. Sell the chips, and you hand China the tools. Block the chips, and you defund yourself. There is no clean answer. And that is exactly what makes Washington so uncomfortable right now. What China is doing: amphibious forces training, economics as a weapon, building a rival alliance, mapping every person in Taiwan. China is not reacting to America. China is executing a strategy, building for one specific operation. On the military side, the People's Liberation Army has been systematically building the exact capabilities required for one specific operation: amphibious assault, moving large numbers of troops and heavy equipment across open water onto a defended shore. You do not build that capability to protect your own coastline. You build it to take someone else's. Anti-submarine warfare systems, air defense suppression, offshore logistics chains designed for sustained operations. None of this was built overnight. Year by year, piece by piece, the infrastructure has gone up. The South China Sea is not a battlefield. China is playing a longer game there. A Coast Guard vessel parks itself on a reef. It has no business being near and refuses to move. A fishing boat gets soaked and turns back. A military jet closes the distance just enough to make the other pilot sweat, but stops short of anything that could be used as justification for shooting back. No casualties, no wreckage. But month after month, those waters start feeling like Chinese territory to everyone operating in them. The economy as a weapon. That is where things start getting really uncomfortable. When Japan's Prime Minister spoke up about Taiwan, Beijing moved. Rare earth exports to Japan got cut back. Japanese travelers started getting warnings. Cultural programs were shut down. Seafood imports from Japan stalled at the border. That level of coordination does not get improvised. Someone had already mapped it out and was simply waiting for the trigger. Building a rival alliance. On the diplomatic front, China ran live military exercises this year alongside Russia, Iran, South Africa, and the UAE under the BRICS banner. That has never happened before. BRICS was set up to talk trade. China is quietly converting it into something that looks a lot more like a rival security bloc, one that leaves the United States completely outside the room. The PLA is building out the landing craft, logistics, and assault units needed to put troops ashore on Taiwan. Pressure operations in the South China Sea stay calculated, hard enough to shift facts on the water, careful enough to avoid giving anyone a reason to shoot. Joint military exercises under the BRICS umbrella mark the beginning of a security bloc that rivals NATO. 23 million Taiwanese household records were found in a Chinese surveillance database. Records were categorized by address, ideology, and attitude toward China. But here is the detail that made intelligence analysts go quiet when it surfaced. A database was discovered containing files on nearly the entire population of Taiwan. 23 million household registration records, organized by home address, political beliefs, and a field labeled Attitude Toward China. The company operating the database was directly connected to China's premier state-owned research institution. China is not just preparing to take Taiwan, it is already building the administrative system to govern Taiwan's population after it does. Why this is escalating. Japan dragged in, allies forced to choose. 3 seas are converging. No off-ramp left on the table. The reason this is not slowing down is simple. It stopped being a conflict between 2 countries. The whole region is getting pulled in. Japan steps in. Japan is now in an open diplomatic confrontation with China. After Japan's prime minister said that a Chinese attack on Taiwan would constitute an existential threat to Japan, which is geographically accurate, China's military spokespeople responded with language not used in decades. They warned Japan of a crushing defeat if it intervened in any Taiwan conflict. That is not a diplomatic protest. That is a military threat delivered through official channels. Japan did not back down. Japan accelerated. Anti-ship missiles are being fast-tracked to Japan's southwestern islands, the ones sitting directly between mainland Japan and Taiwan. The United States deployed 36 F-15 Eagle II fighters to Kadena Air Base in Okinawa in spring 2026. Taiwan's 66 new F-16V jets are expected to arrive this year. The Philippines is in near constant confrontation with Chinese vessels in the South China Sea. The United States, Japan, Australia, and the Philippines have been running joint naval exercises in those same waters at a pace without peacetime precedent. China's Southern Theater Command responds to every single exercise with patrols of its own, the numbers that matter. Now, here is the real issue. In a survey of former American government officials and top China analysts, 43% named the South China Sea as the most likely site of Chinese military escalation in 2026. 33% named the Taiwan Strait. That is more than 3/4 of the most informed people on this subject, pointing at the same 2 bodies of water. And then came the warning that almost nobody reported. China's own strategic think tanks published a risk assessment for 2026 and put Taiwan tensions at the top of the list. Not trade, not climate, Taiwan. And that same document warned of what it called a 3 seas linkage. A scenario in which the East China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, and the South China Sea all escalate simultaneously, feeding each other, triggering what the report described as chain reactions at an unprecedented level. Nearly half of the most senior China watchers surveyed put the South China Sea at the top of the 2026 danger list. A third pointed at the Taiwan Strait. Add them together, and over 75% of expert opinion locks on the same 2 bodies of water. Beijing's own research institutions put Taiwan at the very top of their internal risk assessment for 2026. Chinese strategists have already mapped out a scenario where the East China Sea, the Strait, and the South China Sea all blow up at once. Washington sent 36 F-15 Eagle II jets to Okinawa in spring 2026. Taiwan's 66 new F-16V jets are expected to land on the island before the year is out. That warning did not come from Washington. It came from inside Beijing. China's own planners are describing the thing they are most afraid of triggering by miscalculation. What happens next? 3 roads ahead. 1 closing window. A world that will not look the same on the other side. Scenario 1. A diplomatic pause. Trump is pushing for a direct meeting with Xi. The trade deals that got signed last year gave both governments a reason to keep talking. If that conversation produces something both sides can take home, things calm down for a stretch. Nobody solved anything. But when 2 governments have just put months into an agreement, neither one is in a rush to blow it up. The pressure eases. The problem does not move. It just stops making noise for a while. Scenario 2. An accident nobody ordered. A pilot reads the distance wrong, and the other side does not wait to find out if it was intentional. A captain holds his course because turning back in front of his crew is not an option. Someone out there, on a ship or in a cockpit, gets a fraction of a second to make a call and makes the wrong one. That is how a lot of wars have actually started. Not from orders at the top. From one moment on one day when there was no more room to back out. Scenario 3. Beijing does the math. With every year that goes by, something shifts against Beijing. A new weapons package shows up in Taiwan. A U.S. installation in the Pacific gets upgraded. A government that was sitting on the fence makes its choice and signs a defense deal. Over time, they add up, and the math starts moving in the wrong direction for China. The window Beijing thinks it has is real, but it is not permanent. The day Taiwan actually does something that Beijing reads as a real move toward formal independence, this whole chess game flips. It stops being about careful calculations and becomes a straight-up decision with no easy exits. Road 1. You patch together a short-term deal. Everyone claims victory, and the headlines calm down for a while. But nothing that actually caused this mess has moved an inch. Road 2. Someone makes one bad call in the heat of the moment, and suddenly, you're all dragged into a place nobody actually wanted to go. No plan, no playbook, just momentum and consequences. Road 3. Beijing runs the numbers, decides waiting makes it worse, not better, and moves while the move is still worth making. China's chip situation is not what Washington hoped it would be by now. The domestic producers are ahead of where the export controls were supposed to leave them. Alibaba and ByteDance have already moved their AI infrastructure off American hardware, not because the homegrown stuff matches it yet, because sitting on a foreign supply chain when things go bad is a risk. They decided they could not keep carrying. What is unfolding right now is not a trade dispute. It is not political theater. It is a fundamental reshaping of how global power is organized, happening in real time. And the window to influence which direction it goes is narrower than most people realize. Here is the truth nobody wants to say directly. The world order that has existed since the Cold War ended is being renegotiated right now, with aircraft carriers, semiconductor factories, and military exercises happening across a stretch of ocean that most people only see on a map. America is not afraid of China because China is powerful. Every superpower eventually faces a challenger. America is afraid because, for the first time in a generation, the challenger has gotten powerful enough in the exact right places that the old responses no longer work. So here is the question I want to leave with you. If this confrontation reaches the moment of decision over Taiwan, over the South China Sea, over who controls the technology that runs the next century, which side do you think bends first? And what does the world look like on the other side of that answer? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this video showed you something the news did not, hit subscribe, because this story has more chapters coming. We will be here when they do.